Hello, I would like to welcome you to the presentation of MyITest4U for desktop application. Everything which is mentioned in this screencast you can also find on the website under Getting Started Desktop. In MyITest4U you can set some preferences, and it's best to set them when you start MyITest4U the first time. So I just installed it, and you can start it by clicking on the desktop icon. Now when you start it the first time, you have to make a new user. I use just M and 1, that stands for my password. Then you click OK, and we want to do something with the desktop. We want to do desktop test generation, so OK. And now the editor for the desktop test generation opens. The preferences you can set under File Preferences, and in this dialog you have to enter a path to an editor. This should be a text editor. It will be used to have a look at the log files and at other files that MyITest4U will be creating. So you just click here and you go to program files. Then I use usually PSPad. So you just set the path to it. Then another path which you will have to set is the path to a program similar to Excel. I use LibreOffice on my machine. So you go just here and here. And yes, here it is, the Excel program. This is useful if you want to do some major editing in test parameter files. These are comma-separated files, and they can be easily edited using an Excel-like program or Excel. Then another program which will be useful is something similar to WinMerge or WinMerge. This will be used to compare files. So I will also set the path to WinMerge. So these are the preferences you should set when you start MyITest4U the first time. The path to Java Home you just can leave empty, so the Java virtual machine will be used, your standard one, the one that was used to open MyITest4U. And this you also can leave at 5. These are the maximum test results which MyITest4U will get from the database. Just click OK, and your preferences are set. Before you can start testing, MyITest4U has to know your auth, the application on the test. And you can enter an auth in the following way. You start MyITest4U. Then you log in. Now we want to do something with the desktop application, so we choose desktop. Then we want to do desktop test generation. And what we want to do is to insert a new auth. So that you can do this, just make sure that this drop down here is set to new auth. Then you go to the menu, new auth. Here you can enter any name, MyTest desktop, for example. Then you have to enter the first window title of your application. That we will use the one that is provided by MyITest4U. And the title for this one, the first window title is just student logger application. Then you have to make a profile. In the profile, the profile can have any name, my test, for example. And here you have to enter the path to the application which you want to test. And the test application which is supplied by MyITest4U is just under MyITest4U in test application. Then the path to the white engine you can leave, just use this one. And you can say that this will be your default profile. Now you click OK, OK. And you also have to enter a node release. Again, you have to make sure that this drop down here is set to new auth release. Then you go to auth, new auth release. And here you can enter any name. You click OK. And now your auth is known by MyITest4U. Before you can start creating your tests, MyITest4U has to know all the GUI elements of your application. And to enter them all manually would be quite a lot of work. And therefore, MyITest4U provides a sub-application which is called Spider. And the Spider will do the work for you. Before you can use the Spider, you have to set the configuration. You can do this on the Spider, then Spider summary, and the configuration name you have to use for the provided application is a student. You just save it, and then you can close this dialog, and now you can go to run Spider, and here you have to select which control types the Spider should use. We will select the menu items. When you select the menu items, this means the Spider will click all the menus in your application. After each click on the menu, the Spider will collect all the GUI elements found. Then it will click the next menu and collect all the GUI elements found. Once it's finished, then it will start over and go through all the sub menus and so on. The Spider configuration, as already mentioned, has to be student. The rest you can leave the defaults, and now we can run the Spider by clicking Spider. We just save the configuration. Now the Spider will start. What will the Spider do? As I said, the Spider will click on the menu, then collect all the GUI elements. Then the Spider will look if in the GUI elements are any menus, and will go through the new menus, and this will continue till all the menus have been clicked. You will see now how this works. First, the Spider collects all the GUI element on the main screen. Now it clicks File. So all the menus of the application are shown. It will collect them. And now it will go through each menu. This will take now a few moments, and we will just watch what the Spider is doing. Soon the spider will have clicked all the menus. And now you see the spider finish. And the next thing we can do is create our tests. Before we will create our first test, just something about MyITest4U. As you can see, MyITest4U knows two things. This is test and test block. Now a test contains just one or more test blocks, otherwise there are no major differences. And I will use the word test also for test block or for test. And to create our first test block, we have to go to the test block tab, and we have to use this table here to create our test steps. Each test step looks the same. You have first to look for the window title of the window in which your GUI element will be found. Then you have to select control type and then the element name. After that, you have to enter an action, so what will be done with the element, and to those we will come later. And if the action needs some values, for example, if you want to enter the text, then you have to enter the values here. So we go just here, and if we press Control Space, then we will get all the possible entries we can choose. We will choose student logger application, and we will click a button on the application, and we will click the button Epsilon Open. And now the action will be, as I said, it will be click. And the click has no values, no parameters. And if you would like to enter another test step, you just can go into the comment column of the last step in your test block, and if you hit tab, then a new test step will be entered. We won't do this because we don't need another test step, and we will have to give this test a name. We call it my first test. We save it, and now we can also run this test and see what happens. If you use the default run configuration, you just can click the run button here, and the test will start. And you see it opens the application, it clicks on this button, and this window opens. So you have seen it's quite easy to create a test manually, but if you have to create many of them, then it will still take a lot of work. And therefore, MyITest4U allows you to generate some test templates automatically. MyITest4U allows you to generate some test templates automatically. And before we will use the generator, we have to do some configuration. The configuration you can just do by going to config test generation, and then you can set, for example, the default exclude. and exclude means all the GUI elements which are in the exclude. Go to the summary, we will get the list of all the GUI elements. So all the GUI elements which are found here, they are excluded from test generation. They won't be used. We can close this, and now we can go to the generator, and we can generate Windows templates, and we will say that MyITest4U should add the steps to the first GUI element, and we just click OK. And now MyITest4U generated a Windows template for all the windows of our test application. We will just copy this one and search for it so that we can have a look what MyITest4U did. So you see first the menu item make new student will be clicked so that the dialog will open. Then we have here all the GUI elements which are found on this window. The window, just you will remember, is this one. And you see in the test we have this back by a small amount and forward by a small amount. These are usually these buttons here in the scroll panes, and let's assume we don't want to use them. So we can go back to MyITest4U and do some change in our configuration. So we go to config, test, generation, and we want to do this by using the GUI elements, and we want to make a change in the buttons to exclude. So we select the buttons, and we don't want to have this one and this one, as you can see, back by a small amount and forward by a small amount. And now it would be quite cumbersome to go through all the pages and all the GUI element and select all these every time they appear to select them. That's why, for this reason, you can just check this, and this means it's valid for all windows. And if you now update the selection, then you will see they are all marked. You see here it's marked, here it's marked, and so on. So we just say OK, and if we now generate our tests again, then MyITest4U will just override the generated tests which it did in the first time. So we click OK, and now you see MyITest4U already loaded the new test. So if we do a search, there won't be any change. And as you can see, these two buttons below there, they did disappear. And now we can have a look what MyITest4U really will do with this test. But before we can run it, we have to do some changes, because now if we look at the test, you will see the cancel button will be clicked and the OK button will be clicked, and this cannot work because when you click cancel, the dialog will close and then you will not find the OK button. Therefore, we will change the test. Before we can change the test, we have to remove the dash in front. The dash is here. As I said, when you regenerate your tests, MyITest4U will just override them, and you have seen there are no questions asked. And if you already made some changes to the generated test, you will lose them. Therefore, to avoid this, MyITest4U gives in the test generation an invalid test name. And test name only can have numbers and letters, and special characters, they are not allowed. And that's the reason why we have to remove it and just save the test again. Now it's saved under the new name, and we can go here and we can tell MyITest4U it should ignore the cancel button. If we save now the test, we will update it, and you see the cancel button test step is now has now a white background, and all the other steps have the green background. And it just means everything which is green, MyITest4U will do, and everything that's white, MyITest4U will ignore. And this has the same effect as if this cancel button wouldn't be here. Now we can run the test again in the same way as before. And you see MyITest4U really does what you expect it to do. And it's finished now, and you can see there is one error. The error you can see by the exclamation mark. This is always added if when something didn't work or when you had an error in your test. And you can also go into the cell where the error appeared, and then you will get this tooltip, and in the tooltip MyITest4U tells you the reason why it didn't work. And the reason is that this GUI element was not found. You can also then have a look at the screenshot, and the screenshot just shows you the application on the test, and the list will be the parent element of these two lists here, and that's the reason why it's not found. But I guess you see MyITest4U can take away a lot of work from you, because if you would have to generate this template manually, yeah, it would take some time to do so. And MyITest4U generates these kind of tests just for all the windows we have. We just can have a look at another one. The percent is the wildcard of which MyITest4U uses in search. That's the wildcard of SQL. We can look at this one here, okay, and see again MyITest4U will click the menu item, that it will open the calendar, and then it will go through all the buttons, because this window doesn't have many things to do. You see the system, that's the menu which is here. It's not here, but it's the menu from which is provided by Windows. Then select range button. The close button will be here, and maximize is this one, and minimize is this one. So you see MyITest4U did find all the GUI elements on the calendar, and you can believe me, it's true for all the windows of our test application. MyITest4U allows you to run more than one test at once. That you can do this, you have to go to Run, then select Generate all run scripts. And out of this dialog, you could run the tests, or you could generate the run scripts. We will do the later one. First, we select all the tests, and then we generate the scripts. The scripts which are generated are normal batch scripts, and they can be used as batch script anywhere you want. And instead of running the test out of this dialog, we will use the test execution. The test execution allows you a lot more possibilities. So we cancel this to the test execution, become our run and then test execution. Now you see this dialog offers quite a lot of possibilities, and I will not go through all of them. First, you have to add some tests. We will just use the first two ones so that you can run that you can build a test execution. And the other thing which I want to mention is the add others button. Here you can add any other executable to the test execution. This is useful. For example, if you want to import a DB snapshot before you run the execution, then you can do this by using this. Then when you look at the table here, then you see the table has quite a lot of columns, and each column is a runtime parameter. And now, if you wouldn't have this table, it would be very difficult to make sure that all the run scripts have the same parameter. And you can also adjust the parameters of all scripts using this dialog. For this, you select one of the tests, then you can use the update all. And let's suppose we want to change this one into blah. When you click OK, then you see the global find is now blah for both tests. We will just take it away, otherwise we get a lot of error messages. And now we can create the execution. For this it needs a name, just call it E1, then we will create it. It will be saved and then created. And now you can, this test execution which was now created is again a normal batch script, and you can run it like any other Windows batch script. And we will do just that. So we go here, we have here our run script, and we just run it. Now MyITest4U will run the two tests we selected, and once it's finished, it will pass the log file and write the results to the MyITest4U database so that you can have a look at them later on. So you see MyITest really runs the two tests. And it will just take another moment, then it will be finished. And now it's finished, and we can go back to MyITest4U. So MyITest4U finished the execution, and we want to have a look at the test results. This you can do under Analyze and then Show Test Results. And you see in the dialog which opens, you have at the top a summary of what you have done. And, here you have the current checkbox. If it's selected, then the dialog will only show the last run of each test. And if you select it and make a refresh, it will just show all the runs which have been done of a certain test. This won't change because we did only do one run. So when you select current again and do a refresh, then you see that the date and the user come back. This is the reason for this is when we have only one test, then we know the run date and the user, and when we have more than one test, of course, we don't know the user, and the run date will be different for every test. You see we have here two errors, and if you want to have a look at them, you can just now double click the test, and MyITest4U will open the test for you. If and you can have a look at the test. And this we will do now. if you look at the test, you see we have this error here, which is that the list was not found, and we have the error here. It will tell us that the button was not found. This is because we didn't say MyITest4U, it should ignore the cancel. So it click cancel, and of course after that the OK button was not present anymore. So you see you can get very easily to the test by just double clicking an entry in the table. Then here you can show the error messages. This is now not very interesting because we have only 2 error messages. Let's suppose you have a lot of tests and with a lot of errors, then this dialog will be very useful because you can usually very quickly see what happened. And the really nice thing about this dialog is you can filter the tests by error messages. You just can select one of the error messages. You refresh, then only the tests which have all error messages are shown. So all the tests with the error messages, which have only the error message which are selected, will disappear, and all the tests which have no errors at all will disappear. So that's why we have now only one test. If we select this one also and do a refresh, then you see we have no tests anymore. So they're quite useful. And the other thing which I have to mention is if you have the same error message in more than one test, then just this number will go up, and here you will get an example of the test in which the error message was produced. We can cancel this. If we do a refresh, then our tests come back. This is all I wanted to show you about test analysis. Next, we will have a look at the creation of tests. As I said, a test contains just one or more test blocks. And this feature can be quite useful. For example, if your application requires a login, then you can make a test block which does the login, and you can use this same test block then for all the tests you have to run. So if you want to generate a test, you have to click on the plus sign. Then the test which is already shown will be used. You have to enter the position. It's position 1. You click OK. Then you can here search for another test. Now we are here. We will take this one because we can edit this one. And if you click again on the plus, you can again tell MyITest4U where you want to have it. We want to have it before the one we already inserted, so we enter the position 1. And now if we go to the test tab, you will see we have here the test created, and we can have to give it a name that we can save it. Let's call it TT1, and we click save, and now the test is saved. And you can see we have here our first step test with this single step, and we have here the second one. Now the test and test block, the parameter values, they are independent from each other. You can see this if you change the def val here into something else. For example, y to save it. Yes, we want to update this test. And if we go back to the test block, and if we search for our test, It's just the first one. Then you see there is still the def value. And the same is true if you change here into something else and you save it, then it won't affect our test block, our test. You see we have still the value here which we entered before. And now let's suppose we want to change our first test. Then this change will also appear here. You can do this by again searching for the test. Now we want to add a step to it. We can do this by going to the last column and just hit tab. And once we clicked the Y open button, we will now just, for demonstration, add another button. The no action button. Click is the action. And now we will change this in the order, so this way. And now we have here the same test step. We can click here and then it will be renumbered because the same test step is not allowed. And now we will save this test here. Yes. Now we have saved it. And you see we have now clicked the button no action and then the open button. If we go to the test and we search now for the test, then you see we have now the change. It appear here too. And so this is also quite useful because let's suppose that for whatever reason the before mentioned login will change, you have to do something more. Then you have to change it only once, and all the tests which will have then this test block will be changed automatically. So also this feature of the tests is quite useful. MyITest4U allows you to run the same test with different parameter values. And I will show you now how you can do this. To variate the test parameters, you have to open the test parameter file. This you can do by clicking on the semicolon here. You open the test parameter file. Now the test parameter file has always the same structure. You have first the step column, then the index column. The index is just the index of the element and it will start at 0. Then you have find, find not, and the AP column. The AP stands for additional parameter and can be used to fine tune the test step. Under the step column, you have the parameter values if there are any. So even if a step has no parameters, like in the first one, the step column is always present. Then you see here, you have here the old values. The reason for this is MyITest4U overrides the parameter file each time you save the test. And so that you still have the old values, MyITest4U will add them just below the current values. The parameter values, they are always used till the first empty line. Once there is an empty line, MyITest4U will stop reading parameters. Now, if you want to variate the parameters, you can do this by just copying for example this line, and add it several times below. We will just do this now. You always have to select a cell that you can do the paste, and we will do it one last time. And now we have many times the val, and this is not very interesting, so we will change this. In A, S, D, F, and G, and we save the file. And of course, we want now to update the test. And now you see that this drop-down list changed from 1.1 to 1.6. The meaning is the following: we have the first test loop, and in total you have 6 test loops for this test. That means you have 6 different parameter sets. And now you see here we have the def val, which is the first parameter. If we go to the second line, we have the A, as it was said, the fourth line the D, and we can also go to the last line, and there we have the G, so as it is in a parameter file. Now you can change the parameters in the test, which is easier because in the test you can see the test step. For example, you can change this in ASD, save the test, and if you go back to the parameter file, then you see we have now in the last value the ASD. We can also change the values here in QWE. If we save the file, then it will also change here in the test. If we go to the fourth loop, then we have here the QWE. So you see you can quite easily add several test parameters to a test, and you can also change them in the 2 ways shown. MyITest4U comes with 2 universal checkpoints, and we will have a look at them now. The first one is very easy to use, and it works the following way. You can tell MyITest4U that it should look for a certain text to appear in every window, and you can also tell MyITest4U that a certain text shouldn't appear in every window. To use this checkpoint is very easy. You go to auth, then update auth, and if you enter here a text, which I already did, in a global find, then MyITest4U will look in every window for the text blah. Or you can also use here the global not to find, then the text which is entered here should not appear on the window. You can enter more than one string. You have to separate them using the pipe character. So if we say OK now, and if we run the test, then MyITest4U should just show us some errors. And you see now we really got the errors after every click, and if we look at those errors, then it tells us that blah should be found. And if we look at the screenshot, you can see there was no blah on the GUI. And the same is true for this error here. Notice the different error of the list. If we go down here where we click again, it will tell us that the string blah should have been found. So you see this checkpoint is very easy to use, and a possible use case could be that your application should always show, for example, the release which it was made, and in this way you can check this very easily. The second universal checkpoint is a bit more complicated to use, and I will just explain it. You can tell MyITest4U to compare every window against a reference. And for this to work, you have to go to Run, then the Run configuration, and here you have the possibility to select Do Analysis. And you also can then tell MyITest4U it should take a screenshot after each time it runs the analysis. And now the analysis will work in the following way. You first run your tests, then MyITest4U will write out every window, and it will write out all the GUI elements found on the window in a text file. And then let's suppose you have some dates which will appear on your GUI, and of course these dates will be different every day you run your tests. And MyITest4U will then can also filter out these GUI elements. All you have to do is to run your test a second time. If you want to filter the date, it has to be a day later, and MyITest4U will produce a filter which will remove everything which was different from the first run. And now your reference is ready, and you can run your tests against this reference, and MyITest4U will do a comparison of all the GUI elements in each window, and if there is a difference, you will get an error. This is quite difficult to show you in a demonstration, and it's also difficult to explain. Just try it out. It's a lot easier to use than it is to explain. I hope you enjoyed this presentation about MyITest4U, and I guess you got a good impression about all the possibility that MyITest4U offers. And I'm very sure the developers will answer the question MyITest4U with yes, of course. And I hope also the tester will be very happy with MyITest4U, because it will save them really a lot of time. So go ahead and grab yourself a trial and convince yourself that MyITest4U really keeps its promises. So all that's left is to thank you for your attention, and hopefully see you back on myitest4u.com.